All right, Brent Porce here at topvelocity.net. We're going to do this video once again on overhead lifting. I know I've talked about this before, but I want to go more in depth into why overhead is so lifting by looking at the anatomy, and you'll see the importance of it. Now, we've heard many coaches say no overhead lifting. I have theories on that. I believe it has more to do with the fact of trying to program your throwing with your lifting. You know, a lot of guys will go lift overhead and then they're sore the next day because they use their arms to throw, and a lot of coaches don't like those complications. So it's a programming issue. But let's talk about the importance here, because a lot of guys are being scared away from it, and then they have weak upper bodies because of it. And studies show if you come into the season with a weak upper body, you're more prone to injury. So we need strong upper bodies. You know, we even look at the studies on the forces that are hitting the upper bodies. When the arm lays back, we've seen at high velocities about 60 pounds of force is pulling your arm back. At pitch release, the forces pulling your arm out of a socket, the distraction forces, have been shown to be up to 140% of your body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, we're close to 300 pounds pulling your arm out of socket. So we need these strong upper bodies to be able to endure the rigors of being an elite high velocity pitcher. We can't just ignore this, and then we're going to slip into weakness, wear and tear, and just like the studies there, we're going to be more vulnerable to injury. So, you know, you do hear that it's unnatural to lift overhead, but I would say that's not really true. I would say it's really an easy thing for us to do, specifically if you're weak, but we are built to go overhead, and therefore we can strengthen overhead. We can take this bar and lift overhead, and it's actually very good for us. But let's first look at the architecture of the shoulder to the hip. Similar sockets, and we have this bone moving around in the joint, just like down here at the hip. But these scaps here are built to glide around the rib cage. They're actually not really connected to the rib cage, not like the ilium down here, part of the pelvis. This is locked in, connected to the spine. It doesn't have any movement. So the only movement in the socket's really going to come mainly from the femur lifting. That's different at the shoulder. You'll see the humerus go up and down, and the humerus is built to go to about right here. And the only way we can get it overhead, if we're going to press overhead, is this scap has to glide up or upwardly rotate, so now we can press overhead. So if it was unnatural to lift overhead, you wouldn't have a gliding socket like the scap for the shoulder socket, which is built to glide and lift up and move around the rib cage. But that creates some complications, meaning if there's muscles here that drive this, like the mid-trap, the serratus anterior, the levator scapula, if those aren't there to help drive the scap, or they're dysfunctional, not working well, then we have problems. So if you've ever gone overhead and you can't get your arm all the way up, you have some dysfunction. If you've gone overhead and you put some weight and you get a little sharp pinch of pain, you're probably not even strong enough to hold that position. And that's why you're struggling with the weight in that position. So we have to first make sure we got function. So if you're in the weight room and you're starting to do some overhead presses like this, okay? Behind the back would be harder, or just straight overhead presses, and you're struggling to get overhead, or you're feeling pinching in your shoulder, that's just too much weight for you, and you don't have the strength or the function to be able to support that kind of weight. So you have to start small or low. And then really work on the functional aspects of feeling the scap glide and the wings swing up, like giving the arm room to lift that humerus overhead. If you go to lift overhead and your arm's like it's stuck down here, you can't fully get up, you don't really have good function, so you need to work on that. There's a lot of exercises. You can probably just look online right now to get exercises to help with scapular function. I've posted some up before. But once you get that function and you feel pretty mobile overhead, then you can start building overhead strength, stabilizing overhead, pressing overhead, which is what we do a lot in the 3X velocity programs, even the 2X programs. So don't shy away from the overhead. We are built to do this. If not, we wouldn't have scaps gliding around the rib cage. And you need overhead strength. Like I said, there are studies showing those that are weak with their overhead or their shoulder strength going into season are more prone to injury. So it's very, very important for you in your health and your career to build overhead strength. And if coaches are telling you you should lift overhead, they're probably just struggling with the programming of it with your throwing. And it would be ideal if you had already had strong overhead strength coming into that organization, because trying to now go build your overhead strength when you have to throw every day does create some complications. So take your off-season guys to build the overhead strength, so when you go into the season, it's not breaking you down and makes you so sore where it's hard for you to throw the next day. And then you can keep that strong upper body that you really, really need to be healthy in this game. So if you have any questions or comments, post them below. I'm hoping that this helps you guys understand it's important that you lift overhead. It's just knowing how to do it and when to do it is the key. So thanks for listening.